Hello everybody, it's my module 5 video essay submission on sinking Qi. So let's begin it. The concept of sinking Qi in Wing Chun sits at the intersection of history, philosophy and embodied martial skill. While many modern discussions often risk mystifying the term, within traditional practice, it refers to a concrete internal experience. The settling of energy, breath, intention, and structure downward into the body's base. To understand sinking of Qi fully, one must trace its evolution from the internal cultivation practices of the Shaolin monastery through the refinement of Wing Chun in southern China to the teachings of recent or close enough recent practitioners such as Ip Man and Chu Tin, who have passed away a few decades or a decade ago, and also in living practices of living masters such as Sifu John Kogan. The roots of sinking Qi lie within classical Chinese martial and meditative traditions. At Shaolin, martial training developed alongside Zen Buddhist practice. Breath regulation, standing meditation, and coordinated movement were used to unify mind and body. The principle of Qi sinking to the Dantian, which is lower abdominal field, was central, which means energy and awareness descend, calming the mind and stabilizing the body. As martial systems spread from northern temples to southern provinces like Fujian and Guangdong, internal principles merged with pragmatic combat methods. Wing Chun, traditionally attributed to the Nan Ng Mui and later developed in southern China, retained its internal emphasis but expressed it more economically. Instead of large, overt Qigong sets, internal work became embedded within form practice, especially Sionim Tao. By the time Wing Chun emerged publicly in Foshan and later Hong Kong, these internal ideas were preserved not as esoteric ritual, but as embodied skill. In Wing Chun, sinking Qi generally refers to releasing unnecessary muscular tension, allowing the body weight to settle naturally through the hips into the ground, keeping the chest relaxed and slightly hollowed, like this, but also like this, so relaxed and slightly hollowed, and letting intention descend to the lower center rather than rising upward. That's why we call it sinking. When Qi rises, the shoulders tense, breathing becomes shallow, and reactions become emotional. When Qi sinks, the stance stabilizes, movements become economical, and the practitioner feels rooted yet mobile. Ip Man's Wing Chun was marked by refinement and subtlety, though he did not publicly lecture on esoteric energy theory. His demonstrations revealed profound internal control. His emphasis on relaxation was not casual, it was foundational. In his interpretations, the chest remains soft, elbows drop, and the stance settles without stiffness. The physical dropping reflects energetic sinking. In Sionim Tao, stillness trains the practitioner to release tension downward. In Chi Sao, sinking Chi prevents being uprooted by incoming force.
You show me how to convert a Word doc to a PDF.
And just a second, please. My music is off.
I forget.
Seriously?
Sorry. Where was I? So, in Chi Sao, sinking Chi prevents being uprooted by incoming force, physical force, and rather than meeting strength with strength, one absorbs and redirects through a settled base. For Master Ip Man, sinking Chi was inseparable from correct Wing Chun structure. It was not added to technique, it was the method behind correct technique. One of his finest students, our lineage grandfather, Chun, articulated sinking Chi with unusual clarity. He described the practice as allowing the mind, or Nim, to gently rest in the lower dantian, lower abdominal field, and when the mind sinks, the body follows. Chu Shongtin's teachings emphasized deep release of muscular effort, expansion without rigidity, and using intention instead of force. In his method, one does not push Qi downward through willpower. Instead, by letting go of unnecessary tension, the body's internal pressure reorganizes naturally, and practitioner feels warmth, heaviness, or fullness in the lower abdomen and legs. Sinking Qi in this view is a result of correct mental placement. When intention floats upward, the body becomes top-heavy and unstable. When intention sinks, balance becomes effortless. In Bruce Lee's view, as I often include him into my essays because he's one of the, if not the most popular in general audience, ambassador of, among other things, internal martial arts, especially Wing Chun, which is his primary or first discipline that he attended and trained. I would condense his teachings on sinking Qi into maybe 4 words, which is grounded presence without mysticism. His early training integrated the importance of rooting and sensitivity. However, Li resisted overly metaphysical interpretations. For him, sinking chi could be understood in functional terms: grounding, emotional control, and mechanical efficiency. But his later philosophy emphasized being centered under pressure, avoiding unnecessary tension, and remaining psychologically calm in combat. And in practical terms, sinking chi aligns with Li's insistence on being water, my friend, which means adaptable but grounded. If one's energy rises in panic or ego, reactions become stiff. On the other hand, if it sinks, movements remain alive. While Li rarely used traditional terminology later in life, the principle of downward settling remained embodied and embedded in his mechanics and presence. Modern, or more modern, recent interpretation by Sifu Kogan presents sinking chi as an experiential reality grounded in biomechanics and nervous system regulation. Sifu John emphasizes that the practitioner must feel their weight settle through the pelvis into the feet without collapsing posture. Key elements in his interpretation include spinal alignment, allowing gravity to transmit downward, relaxation of hip joints, awareness of breath descending naturally. Rather than conceptualizing chi as mystical substance, Sifu John frames it as integrated body-mind coordination, and when the breath calms and the mind quiets, the body organizes itself more efficiently. I'm a bit under the weather, so forgive me. Forgive me primarily for not taking care of myself. And by not taking care of myself, I do not take care of anybody else. This is drop in the ocean concept, which is very familiar with Wing Chun worldview. So let's get back to sinking chi. In modern terms, sinking chi could be described as parasympathetic activation combined with structural integrity. So calm yet ready. The, let's call it, development from Shaolin to the present moment, like historical development, refers to following concept. So historically, sinking chi began as meditative and martial principle within Shaolin's synthesis of Zen Buddhism and combat training. As Wing Chun evolved in especially southern China, internal work became streamlined. By the era of Ip Man in Hong Kong, the art preserved these principles through form and tactile drills rather than overt Qigong rituals. Today, teachers like Chu Shongtin's successors, especially Sifu Kogan, Sifu John, reinterpret these ideas through both traditional language and contemporary understanding. Meanwhile, Bruce Lee's legacy reminds practitioners not to become trapped by terminology, which is, again, as I mentioned in every other video, influenced by, among others, Jiddu Krishnamurti, who was great Bruce Lee's spiritual teacher. I'm not sure if they ever physically met, although they spent time simultaneously in California, but I have no idea if they ever actually met. So Bruce Lee was mostly influenced by his books while he was recovering from his, I believe, back injury. Again, let's get back to concrete Wing Chun. Despite differences in expression, a consistent thread runs through the centuries, which is energy must settle, the mind must calm, structure must align, power must rise from the ground, not from the tension. And sinking Qi is not simply about heaviness. True sinking maintains buoyancy, the body feels rooted yet mobile, relaxed yet structurally alive. When properly understood, sinking Qi allows greater sensitivity in Qi Sao, more efficient power transmission, emotional steadiness under pressure, and reduced fatigue through minimal muscular strain. From the halls of Shaolin to contemporary training spaces, the principle remains unchanged. That is, when awareness descends and tension dissolves, the practitioner becomes stable, responsive, and internally unified. Compact. To conclude, sinking Qi in Wing Chun represents continuity between ancient internal cultivation and modern martial efficiency. We live in 21st century, so everything is about efficiency. It transgressed our sacred discipline as well. From the meditative foundations of Shaolin Monastery to the refined teachings of Ip Man, the internal clarity of Chu Shongtin, pragmatic philosophy of Bruce Lee, and the embodied instruction of Sifu John, this whole principle endures. It's not mystical force descending from above. It is awareness settling into the body's center. When Qi sinks, the practitioner stands naturally rooted, which is calm, connected, and ready. Dear Wan Tao Kung Fu Academy Teachers Course, that was everything I prepared for this topic, and looking forward to discuss all of these ideas in person or online, preferably both. Peace, love, and Kung Fu.